All right, folks, our last stop of the day, attention and memory. So first we're going to talk about infants' attention. Paying attention, as you may have guessed, plays a key role in many of the developments that we previously described today. Infants have to first attend to objects before determining cause and effect or categorizing them or things like that we talked about. So attention is kind of that first step to even allow those other things. So it has been researched pretty heavily, infants' attention. Um, some research has shown that 3-month-olds can only sustain attention for 5 to 10 seconds. Not very long. And it gradually increases over time. In fact, it's much better and more complexly sustained by 2 years old. So we see a lot of improvement over that, those first 2 years in their attention abilities. It goes from 5 to 10 seconds to being much better and longer. Also, an interesting finding is that attention and heart rate are linked. You can see in the chart here kind of the fluctuations of heart rate and the levels of attention and how it changes. So researchers have determined that there are different phases of attention, which you can see here, and it's marked by changes in heart rate. How does this benefit research? It actually can help strengthen techniques like habituation or violation of expectations, things we've talked about. It can further confirm that attention is sustained or not by looking at heart rate and adding that to the picture. So that's infant attention. What about infant's memory? So y'all had a lot of questions on this actually in the past few weeks, but infant memory, first of all, let's look at one experiment. So there was an experiment that used the operant conditioning procedure we talked about before. Like the image here, you tie a ribbon to the infant's ankle and it's tied to a mobile up above. And their kicking makes the mobile move. So they would train babies 2 to 6 months of age to kick in order to make the hanging mobile move. So they went through this training period, and then the babies were returned to the lab after certain amounts of delays of various durations. So we're looking at, did they remember how to make the mobile move? How long did it take them to remember? Looking at things like that after a delay. So it was found that 2-month-olds, they would kick immediately after a 24-hour delay, but they forgot the procedure altogether after just a 3-day delay. So we can kind of get a picture of their extent of their memory at 2 months old. It's pretty short-lived, right? So they were able to remember at 24 hours, but at 3 days they forgot. So there's a fine line somewhere between 24 hours and 3 days. Now 6-month-olds, you could see it's much better, much improved. So in 6-month-olds, they remembered the training 2 weeks later and they forgot 3 weeks later. So it's getting better, but still a bit short-lived. But this gives us some knowledge about the extent of babies' memory at 2 months versus 6 months. Definitely seems to improve over time, but it's still short-lived as they don't seem to remember after a 3-week period, even at 6 months. It's going to continue improving over time. So that leads us to our last stop here, infantile amnesia. So think about, what is your earliest memory? How old were you? Just think about it. And infantile amnesia is something that a lot of you asked about. So this is the inability to recall episodic memories from infancy and toddlerhood, from those early years. So many of us as adults struggle to remember anything at all before around 2 to 4 years of age. Most adults can't remember anything before that time. And then they struggle to remember just childhood memories in general. But they're more common than those younger years. So also I want to say that episodic memories refers to memories of situations or events. So a lot of adults can't remember things from usually before 3 years old. There's some theories on this, one being an immature memory system. So there's kind of a failure to store and retrieve information. In a few weeks, we'll talk about the information processing theories and how those theories propose we store and retrieve info. This view argues that babies have immature memory systems and they can't successfully store and retrieve information yet. Another theory is limited language ability. So babies and toddlers obviously don't yet have many words and labels under their tool belt yet. And they don't have the words and labels needed to fully comprehend the things that they're experiencing in their life, right? So that idea here is that this impedes the ability to rehearse and remember things long term. They don't have the language to do so yet. Some argue against this theory. They note that many non-human animals also exhibit infantile amnesia, and obviously they don't have language, not humans. But maybe it's something unique to humans. Maybe the role of language in memory is unique. So it's just one theory out there. Also, immaturity of the brain itself, such as the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex, which play roles in language and memories. And some even argue that the rapid generation of brain cells in early years is what erases memories. So they're saying that new neurons disrupt brain circuits that are established by older cells. So this hypothesis was supported by a study with mice. So researchers could make baby mice's memories last longer if they lowered their levels of neurogenesis. So interesting. There's a lot of theories out there, as you can see. We don't have a hard answer to what causes infantile amnesia. Why can't we remember things? And there are some accounts out there, people claiming they can't remember when they were a baby or when they were even, some people say they remember their birth. Those are hard to both prove and disprove, those personal accounts, but they are out there. You can take it how you want to. But it is something that doesn't have a definite answer. These are just some of the views out there, but very interesting stuff. A lot of you had questions about childhood trauma and in relation to memory. So yes, there are links to between childhood trauma and increased forgetfulness of early memories, which can be a protective or a coping strategy as a result of that trauma and those adverse experiences. I want to note that toddlers and young children can recall memories from weeks, sometimes months, or even years prior. So we know this how, because they talk about these events from their past. We hear toddlers and young children talk about events. So we know that they do have memory. So they have a sense of episodic memory at this time. It's just that the further they get from childhood, the harder it seems to be to remember things from it. We also want to consider the difference between types of memory. So what we've been discussing here is episodic memory of life experiences, but there's also something called semantic memory. This is just general knowledge of the world, general facts, vocabulary, manners, etc., things like that. General knowledge. There's also procedural memories. So this is just knowing how to do something, like brushing your teeth, riding your bike. This is procedural memory. So we also want to consider the differentiation between types of memory here, and the implications for how long they are retained throughout the lifetime. So that was a lot, but we're just kind of, you had a lot of questions on this, so I just wanted to make sure I addressed it. But one last note is, just because a young child won't be able to access early memories as an adult does not mean it's not worthwhile to provide them with ample, rich life experiences, right? Remember, they're still experiencing tons of learning, and so much crucial development is occurring in these early years. So it's important that babies and toddlers are receiving daily experiences and interactions to stimulate them. Whether they remember it or not, it's still impacting their development, I assure you. So I just wanted to end on that note. But hopefully that helps us to get started thinking about this topic. We'll come back to memory a few times this semester, but that is it for today. So thank you for joining, everyone, and I will see you next time.